Y&R Spoilers reveal that the tensions in Mariah and Tessa's relationship will open up drama. Perhaps the wounds of the past are always the most persistent ghosts, and for Mariah, the past has never left her for even a second. Returning to Genoa City after a long business trip, Mariah brought with her not only heavy suitcases but also a troubled soul, filled with insecurity, fear, and guilt. As soon as she stepped into the familiar but strange house, Mariah clearly felt the cold change in the air, a coldness that not every winter brings. Tessa sat there, silent as a statue, her eyes looking out the misty window but actually looking deep into a separate memory. It was a distance that Mariah knew she had contributed to creating, with a mistake that she herself did not dare to name. Since the last time they spoke frankly, everything seemed to have fallen apart, every small noise in the house became deafening, every glance was a knife piercing through the pride and love that once seemed strong. Tessa was the first to feel her wife's insecurity. She tried to open her heart, pulling Mariah back from the emotional abyss but to no avail. There were long nights when the two of them stayed awake together, in silence, only hearing the howling wind outside and the cold silence between two souls that had once merged. Tessa knew that Mariah was hiding something, a secret or a pain that she could not share, but that silence had gradually turned into a wall separating them. And when Tessa quietly filed for divorce, it was not because she hated Mariah, but because the anger inside her had grown to the point where she could no longer hold on. The pain had exceeded the endurance of a heart that had once accepted to sacrifice everything for love. Tessa hoped for a peaceful breakup, without tears or resentment, but that false peace made Mariah even more panicked. In Mariah's mind, all the memories of the past seemed to rush back, drowning her in guilt, anxiety, and fear of the uncertain future ahead. The day Mariah received the divorce notice from the court, her world seemed to collapse again. All the efforts to hold on, all the times she begged for forgiveness seemed to only push Tessa further away. Mariah tried to explain, to tell about what happened on the business trip, about the moment of weakness, about the moment of losing her way. But all her words were broken by the cold wall that Tessa built. Tessa was silent, sometimes shaking her head slightly, sometimes smiling sadly with a hint of sarcasm, making Mariah even more desperate. She realized that every apology at this moment was like a wind blowing across the desert, unable to soothe the barren land of broken trust. Their love had overcome many storms, had conquered public opinion and prejudice, had been a guiding light for lost hearts, but could not withstand the secrets and mistakes that people sometimes did not dare to face. When the two sat next to each other in the familiar kitchen on a seemingly peaceful morning, Mariah still tried to smile, but that smile was just a weak mask hiding a broken heart. Tessa sat silently, her hands fiddling with the cold cup of coffee, not saying a word, but her eyes contained thousands of emotions that could not be expressed in words. Mariah clearly felt the fear, the torment, and the desire to be forgiven, to touch the warmth of love again. But all her efforts were like a breeze blowing across a deserted field, not enough to move the frozen heart of the person opposite. It was also during those stormy days that Mariah was haunted by her own past. The mistakes she had made, the moments of weakness she had experienced, all of them were like an army of ghosts tormenting her every night. She remembered her abandoned childhood, the times she was betrayed, the times she was hurt, the moment she was willing to sacrifice herself to protect the person she loved. But now, facing the risk of losing everything, Mariah understood the true value of what she once owned. She tried to seek forgiveness from Tessa, but at the same time had to face her own greatest fear, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being alone in this vast world. The truth about the pregnancy made Mariah fall into a state of panic. She was afraid of the thought of being a single mother, afraid of facing the scrutiny of society, afraid of having to explain to Tessa, afraid of losing the last bit of hope for a home she once had. Every day that passed, Mariah felt more and more suffocated. She avoided friends and colleagues, just quietly locked herself in her room, living with unanswered questions. She blamed herself, tormented herself, but then burst into tears because of the feeling of helplessness when she could not turn back time, could not change the past. Tessa, although trying to keep a cold face, but deep down there was still an unhealed wound. She once thought she could forgive Mariah, once hoped to overcome the storm together, but when she discovered the pregnancy, all the remaining trust was shattered. Tessa felt betrayed, insulted, felt like she was just a sideline in her own story. What she once believed in is now just a painful memory, a scar that can never be erased. In the last days before everything collapsed, Mariah still hoped that everything could be mended, that a miracle would happen, that Tessa would understand, would forgive, would start over with her. But the reality was much more cruel, because there were wounds that no matter how much time passed, could never heal, and there were words that, no matter how sincere, could never erase the great pain that the other person had to endure. On the last night when Mariah packed her things and left the house that used to be her home, it was drizzling outside, and her heart was left with nothing but emptiness. The souvenir photos, the small gifts, the mementos of love were now only proof of a past life, of a love that could not be saved. Mariah walked through tears, carrying with her the pain of loss, the haunting of the past, and the fragile hope that one day, she would be brave enough to forgive herself, to face reality, to start over even though the road ahead was full of darkness and challenges. And it was in that moment when she thought she had lost everything, that Mariah realized that even though she could not hold on to Tessa, could not save love, she still had herself and a small creature growing inside her. That was the only motivation for her to keep going, the last hope for her to stand up after falling, the answer to all the pain she had ever experienced. Mariah will never forget Tessa, never forget what they have been through together, but from now on, she must learn to love herself, learn to live with her mistakes, learn to face the future without avoiding it, because only then will she truly mature, be a good mother to the child about to be born, and who knows, maybe one day, happiness will smile on her again, even if it is in a completely different way than what she dreamed of. On that quiet rainy night, when Mariah left the house that had once been the support of two souls, Genoa City was also immersed in a thin mist. The deserted streets seemed to reflect the extreme loneliness that Mariah was suffering. She wandered aimlessly, her heart filled with mixed emotions. Every step seemed to be weighed down by the burden of the past, the uncertain future and the haunting of a life that was gradually growing inside her body. That night, Mariah did not sleep. She just sat quietly by the window of her hastily rented apartment, looking out at the pitch-black sky, listening to the wind howling through the leaves, feeling her heart being suffocated by endless torment and regret. It was also during the first days of living alone that Mariah realized that everything around her had changed. Her friends and colleagues once knew her as a strong, resilient woman, ready to sacrifice for love. Now, in their eyes, Mariah is just a shadow of herself. Quiet, reserved, distant, and always hiding all her secrets behind sad eyes. People close to her like Sharon or Faith sometimes try to approach and ask questions, but Mariah just smiles awkwardly and avoids them. She knows that just one question, one sympathetic look is enough to make her collapse, enough for all the pain to flow out, bursting into tears. She tells herself to be strong, to overcome, but there are nights when she hugs her pillow tightly, crying her eyes out for a lost love and an unknown future. The child in Mariah's belly gradually becomes the center of all her thoughts, her biggest fear but also her last hope to hold her to reality. Every time she goes for a pregnancy checkup, Mariah quietly goes to the hospital by herself, blending in with the crowd of strangers, always bowing her head as if afraid of being recognized by someone. Every time the doctor asked about the baby's father, she blushed, bit her lip, and answered with a clumsy lie. Mariah knew that with just one word of truth, all the secrets would be revealed. She would never be able to return to Tessa, nor could she look her family in the eye again. That's why she chose to stay silent, gritting her teeth to endure all the scrutiny, all the gossip behind her back, living alone with the endless obsession. But Genoa City was never a place where secrets could be hidden for too long. One day, Sharon accidentally discovered the divorce papers that Tessa sent to Mariah, along with the pregnancy test that Mariah hid in the drawer. A mother's intuition made Sharon immediately realize that something terrible was happening. Although she didn't want to force her daughter, Sharon couldn't sit still and watch Mariah destroy herself. She quietly went to see Tessa, hoping to understand everything. The meeting took place in a heavy atmosphere. Tessa could not hold back her tears when mentioning the pain of betrayal, about Mariah's terrifying silence, about the feeling of despair when she knew she was no longer the only one in the heart of the woman she once believed would be with her for the rest of her life. In the following days, the story of Mariah's pregnancy began to leak out, becoming the topic of discussion in the small city. Colleagues at the company, old friends, even those who once admired Mariah and Tessa's love were now surprised, even disappointed. Some people with evil words said that Mariah had betrayed not only Tessa but also herself, betrayed the trust that everyone had placed in her. Some sympathized, some scorned, but all of them only made Mariah more lonely, more desperate. Not only that, the storm did not stop there. The man who appeared on that fateful business trip, the man who could be the father of the child, suddenly contacted Mariah again. He texted, called, and even came to her house to meet her, making Mariah even more confused. She was confused about whether to face him or continue to avoid him, because every time she looked at that face, Mariah remembered her moment of weakness, remembered the moment that broke everything she once cherished. But then, for the sake of the child, she was forced to open her heart, forced to tell the truth, even though she knew the price to pay was too great. Meanwhile, Tessa could not completely cut off all ties with Mariah. Even though she had signed the divorce papers, even though her heart was deeply hurt, every time she thought about the sweet memories, about Mariah's loving eyes, Tessa felt terribly empty. She threw herself into work, toured continuously, trying every way to fill the void in her heart, but the harder she tried, the deeper the pain became. Sometimes, Tessa realized that she still loved Mariah, still hoped that one day the two of them would be able to sit next to each other again, laugh and cry together like in the beginning. But reason reminded her that that love was now forever torn apart, that there were things that could not be forgiven, that could not be forgotten. One incident after another, Mariah began to feel her health decline, the prolonged stomach aches, the sudden fatigue made her worry about the safety of the child. An emergency hospitalization made her realize that she was no longer alone, that from now on she had to live not only for herself, but also for that little creature. In the moment lying on the hospital bed, surrounded by 4 white walls, Mariah cried like she had never cried before. She missed Tessa, missed the warm embrace that was the only place she could find peace. She hoped Tessa would come, would forgive, would be by her side in the most difficult moment, but Tessa still did not appear. Instead, Sharon was there, silently holding her daughter's hand, not blaming, just silently sharing the pain and helplessness with Mariah. From that incident, Mariah began to change. She no longer avoided the truth or feared public opinion. She decided to meet that man again, clarify everything, affirming that she would raise her child alone, without any pity or reluctant responsibility. It was a difficult but necessary choice, because Mariah understood that only by taking control of her own life could she become a good mother, a woman worthy of what she had lost. Meanwhile, in another place, Tessa could not deny missing Mariah. She began to think about what they had experienced, about the great love they had for each other. One evening, standing on stage among thousands of spectators, Tessa suddenly saw Mariah's figure in the crowd, even though she knew it was just an illusion created by memories. At that moment, Tessa realized that she still loved her, that no matter how hard she tried, she could not erase Mariah's figure from her heart. After the show, Tessa left the city, returning to Genoa City, carrying with her a fragile hope that everything was not really over, that maybe a miracle would appear, maybe love still had a chance to revive. And then, on a brilliant sunset afternoon, when Mariah was walking with her stroller by the lake, Tessa's figure suddenly appeared from afar. The two stopped, their eyes met, without saying anything they understood each other. Tears of happiness, regret, and hope welled up together, erasing all the pain, all the misunderstandings, all the mistakes of the past. Although the future still has many challenges, as long as there is love and hope, Mariah and Tessa believe that together they will overcome everything. The road ahead is not easy. Mariah will have to learn how to be a mother, face long days of loneliness, overcome self-torment and the judgmental gaze of the community. Tessa will also have to learn to forgive, learn to trust again, learn to accept the past to move towards the future. But with all that they have been through, they understand that true love never dies, just need to know how to hold on, know how to cherish, know how to forgive, know how to heal each other. And in that moment when the laughter of children rang out in the dark days, when the light of hope shone through the cold night, Mariah realized that she was no longer alone, that she had found herself again, found love again, found a home again, although different from what she had dreamed of, but more beautiful and valuable than ever.